This camera is not the usual choice for a YouTube studio setup, but in this video I want to talk you through why I think the A7R II might be your next YouTube camera. So the A7R II was released in 2015 and when it came out it caused a lot of excitement because it was one of the first cameras to have 4K internal recording, and it was a full frame camera, so that's amazing for your sort of shallow depth of field and your low light capabilities. I think it was probably overshadowed by the release of the A7S, which was more video focused. I think that came about a year later, but it doesn't take away from the fact that this camera is very capable for video and obviously photography too. So at this point the camera is now 10 years old. Why would you even be considering this as an option for your YouTube setup in 2025? Well, it's got 4K internal recording and the 4K footage is very good. I think at the time people were a little bit weird about the quality of the 4K in full frame mode, that it was a little bit softer compared to the APS-C crop mode. But honestly, in my testing, I haven't noticed too much of a difference, especially when it's going to be exported and compressed up onto YouTube. The quality is still very good, especially when you pair it with a nice sharp lens, like this 20mm Viltrox lens, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. As I said, there's an APS-C crop mode, so when you turn that on, it goes into Super 35 mode, so you get a 1.5 crop on the sensor. That actually increases the quality of the 4K footage, and it is a little bit noticeable where it's a little bit sharper. The trade-off there is that if you're moving around, the rolling shutter is a lot more exaggerated. Now the autofocus is very good. I'm using autofocus at the minute, so it's AFC mode on the Sony camera, and I've paired it with the 20mm Viltrox lens. I made a video about the Viltrox lens talking about how the autofocus is very good on the lens, but I think a lot of that is to do with the camera body as well. More modern Sony cameras are very well known for how good their autofocus is and are probably way better than this A7R Mark II. But for the purposes of a YouTube video where I'm sitting here at a desk and the camera isn't moving and I'm not moving around very much, it is perfectly fine for this kind of low action shot where I'm just talking to the camera. Now there is log profiles, as I said, so you've got like S-Log recording inside. That's great if you're wanting to do more like color grading stuff to your footage, but for the purposes of what I'm doing, I haven't even looked at those. I know that unlocks a bit more dynamic range, and if you want to go in and do some color grading stuff, that is great. So you do have that option if you want to do sort of more cinematic style videos. The last thing I want to sort of talk about is why this is such an interesting choice for a YouTube camera is the fact that it's full frame. The full frame sensor is going to give you that really nice sort of shallow depth of field. I think people often associate that with like a more professional look. You can take it a bit too far where everything is just like razor thin in terms of the depth of field, and it's a little bit cheesy sometimes if you stick a 50mm lens on and go to 1.8 and just blow the whole background out. I think you can do it really tastefully. But for this kind of YouTube video where I've got a nice wide lens, it's still a 2.8 aperture, I'm getting a nice wide field of view on the full frame sensor, and I'm still able to throw the background out slightly, so you can see like the lamp behind me in the bookcase is sort of slightly out of focus. You don't get that effect quite as much on an APS-C camera or on a 1-inch sensor camera. Yeah, I think the full frame is a unique look, and there's not many other cameras in this price range that you could get that look for a YouTube setup. So what about the bad points of using this camera for a YouTube setup? Well, the 4K footage, as I said, isn't quite as sharp in the full frame mode. If you want the best quality, you're gonna have to use the APS-C crop mode. But to me, I'm using it in full frame mode and I've used that on my previous videos. I honestly don't see that much of a difference. It also takes that sort of slight digital edge off if you're using the full frame mode. So think of it as sort of like a filtration thing, like you're gonna get a slightly softer image. I'm maybe overstating the word soft here. It's really not soft. It's still very good quality. There's no flip screen on this camera. It does have a little like tilty out. I'll show you on this one. So a little tilty out screen, but it can't rotate. If I wanted to, I could get a little external monitor and just pop it on top of the camera. That might make it a bit easier for doing these kind of YouTube videos and just checking your framing. But in general, I just set up the shot, do a quick like 5-10 second recording, make sure my framing's all okay, and then do the full talking to camera piece and check my footage after just to make sure it's all in frame. There is a recording limit on the camera of 30 minutes. So if you're planning to use this for like recording weddings or podcasts or that kind of event sort of stuff. You do have to be aware that you've got a 30-minute timer on your video, so if you are setting a camera up and then going off to record something else handheld, you're gonna have to run back and stop and start your video again just to make sure you don't lose any of your footage. And the battery life is not great. It's a very small little 1000 milliamp hour battery. You might get an hour of recording if you're lucky, but remember, you're recording 4K video and you've got IBIS running as well and your autofocus running. That's a lot of stuff happening on the camera, and it is a small little battery, so you're going to need a few of those, or use like a dummy battery setup if you're going to make it a more permanent YouTube studio setup. So what are your other options, and why are we even talking about the A7R as an option? In this price range of sort of £400 to £600, you're looking at the Sony ZV-E10 or ZV-1, which is the compact size camera. And then you have the A7R or the A7S. Now the A7S II is a really good option for YouTube too. I kind of like the A7R because it's a bit more focused on the photography side of things too. So you've got a nice big 42 megapixel sensor. Initially I thought maybe someday I want to upgrade to the A7S Mark II, but honestly the quality of the footage coming out of the A7R II, I'm really loving it. I don't see any need to make a change yet. Now the Sony ZV-E10 is probably the best option if you're just getting into YouTube and you want to pick up a camera that is really easy to set up and get going with. It has a flip screen so you can check your framing. It's got a nice little tally light to let you know that you're recording. And the autofocus is very, very good. All of these little features were things that actually made me buy a ZV-E10. And I've barely used it for YouTube. I just prefer the image out of the A7R, and I think a lot of that's to do with the full frame look and how it looks with this 20mm Viltrox lens on it. So in conclusion, I think the Sony A7R II is a really interesting choice as a YouTube camera, especially if you're interested in photography as well and you want something that can take really good photos and really good 4K video as well. So in conclusion, I think the Sony A7R II is a really interesting choice as a YouTube camera, especially if you're interested in photography and you want a camera that can take amazing high quality photos and do really good quality video as well. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions about the camera and any more questions about my setup, please leave it in the comments below. But for now, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you again soon.